Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Road to Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 video. For those of you that don't know, Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush is in its third year, and we are expecting Go Rush to end in March of 2025. While that has not been concerned, we have not had a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show go beyond 3 years since Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, and I think it would be really surprising if Go Rush did. And so at this upcoming Jump Festa, which is December 21st and 22nd in Japan, December 20th, Friday night over here in the United States, which of course this channel will be live for the entire event, broadcasting and covering everything that comes out of it. We are expecting the 9th Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime to be announced. And so in this series on Road to Yu-Gi-Oh! 9, I like to just do various discussion videos on what I think could happen for the 9th Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. There's been a lot of debate as to whether this is going to be a Rush Duel show, or whether it's going to be a Master Rule show, or maybe somewhere in the middle where we have kind of a combination and a hybrid of both, which personally I would love to see. There's also been a lot of debate on whether Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 will be a trilogy to the ongoing Sevens and Go Rush saga that we have gotten. The first two entries into the Rush series have been closely linked together, and it's led many people to debate whether Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 will be directly linked to the first two Rush shows. Well, what I want to do here is I want to talk about my ideal world for Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 to be in. And I feel like this is something that doesn't really get touched on too often. And I've seen it over the last couple of years as all the arguments as to whether Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 should be in the Sevens and Go Rush world, or whether it should be completely on its own and have nothing to do with Sevens and Go Rush. I've seen a lot of the points. I think a lot of the points raised are valid. I think one of the points that resonates with me most is that if Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 is directly related to Sevens and Go Rush, that's a very large barrier of entry. That's 5 years of Rush anime that you will need people to have watched for them to jump into Yu-Gi-Oh! 9, and that might prevent people who maybe are ready to give Rush anime a try depending on how it looks. It might give them hesitancy if Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 has to do with Sevens and Go Rush and is a direct sequel to the events that happened in that show. But here's the thing. I fully agree with that point, by the way. My ideal setting for Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 is actually already going to be in a pre-existing Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime world. I feel like this is something that really does not get talked about enough. Throughout all these Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows, we have like 4 unique worlds that have been created by the shows. I consider Duel Monsters GX and 5Ds all the same world, even though, you know, Satellite and Neo Domino City are very different than the Domino City we saw in Duel Monsters and GX, but we know those 3 shows, thanks to Yugioh and some other things, are definitely in the same, like, reality. As for Zexal with Heartland City, as for Arc 5 with Miami City, and as for Vrains with Den City, we have no idea if Domino City even exists in those worlds. And then, of course, with Sevens and Go Rush, you have Matsuba Town and Goha City, which are, of course, very closely related to each other. One is just in the past, and one is in the present, or the future, if you will. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Has done an amazing job at creating all of these vibrant and lifelike worlds. There's actually 5 unique worlds, now that I'm counting them out loud, that my want for Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 would be for it to take place in a pre-existing world. And that does not have to be a Rush anime world. It does not have to be Goha City or Matsuba Town or the town that borders Goha City or something like that. Well, I think that's probably most likely. I think it would be super cool if Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 takes place in Den City 20 years after the events of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, or in Heartland, 30 years after the events of Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, or even if you want to make these shows have nothing to do with each other, you can make it happen 100 years after the fact. I just think, and I feel like this is something I don't really talk about a lot, I think there are so many already really cool existing worlds that have been created by the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise that deserve to be expanded on, and time deserves to be invested a little bit more into these worlds in my opinion. I don't think we need a brand new world to have a brand new show. And while I know if you have a show 20 years in the future after, let's say, Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains ends, people might be inclined to have the story tie into Vrains, but it really doesn't have to at all. If you want to have like a one-off episode appearance by Soulburner or from Playmaker, I think that would be the coolest thing in the world, but it does not need to be a Go Rush 7 situation where the characters are like interconnected and are very closely tied in with each other, and like the main villain of Sevens is also a primary plot device in Yu-Gi-Oh! Go Rush. Like, we don't need an extremely close connection like that, but I think having a Yu-Gi-Oh! Show take place in an already familiar world where you might see some of the fallouts of the events that happened in that show, and you might get the protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 interacting very, very briefly with a character from Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains or the protagonist of Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, or heck, let them like duel each other in a tournament or something. Like, I think the possibility of that is really, really enticing, and I feel like there is a lot of cool things you can do with a setting like that without having those stories become very interconnected, which is what we've seen in Sevens and Go Rush, and there's been honestly mixed reception to that. So when I say that my big want, maybe not my number one want, but my big want when it comes to the setting of Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 is to already exist in a pre-existing Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime universe. I am not saying that I want this to be a sequel of a prior Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and I think that's the big thing I do want to clarify. I'm not saying by having Yu-Gi-Oh! 9, 20 years after the events of whatever Yu-Gi-Oh! Show, that I want it to be a sequel of that show. I don't. I want it to be a standalone show with its own characters, but I do think that fleshing out a pre-existing world, because Yu-Gi-Oh's created so many awesome existing worlds, by fleshing that world out and by having a chance for older characters to appear, I think that's really, really cool, and I think it would be really, really exciting. So that is one of my big wants for Yu-Gi-Oh! 9. I would love for it to be in an already existing world. And while I do think that it's probably most likely going to be a Sevens or Go Rush world if it happens this way, I do think maybe there's a chance that it will be in an older world. Now, of course, if you're doing another Rush Duel anime, it's probably hard to have that Rush Duel anime in, Den City 20 years after Vrains, because the origins of Rush Duel would have to be totally different than Yuga creating them. And I feel like it's probably going to be in the Sevens and Go Rush world if it is another Rush Duel anime. One, because, I think they want Yuga to have been the creator of Rush. And two, because I think they probably don't want to touch on the Gallop anime series, which is a shame because I still feel like there is a lot of stories that you can tell within those worlds. But if it's going to be Studio Bridge, they're probably going to leave the Studio Gallop anime worlds alone. But one can dream, one can hope. I still think there could be a Rush Duel or a hybrid anime in one of those older Yu-Gi-Oh! Worlds, and I think it would be the coolest thing. And I think, people that loved Zexal, if you tell them the next anime, sure, it's a Rush anime, it's not a sequel to Zexal, but it's in Heartland 30 years after the final episode of Zexal, I think you're going to get a lot of the people that love Zexal to at least check that show out. And I think it's a way that you could get a lot of older spin-off fans maybe back into Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that maybe haven't kept up with it after their show ended, whether it was Zexal, Arc 5, or Vrains. And so I think there's a lot of power in that as well from a marketing and attention standpoint. But, we'll see. It makes sense to me, but I don't know. Maybe you guys want to see something totally brand new. Maybe you think this is a bad idea and you just want to see a totally new world, and that is just the route you want to see it go down. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic down below in the comments. I've never really made a Road to Yu-Gi-Oh! I've been doing this since Yu-Gi-Oh! 6. A Road to New Yu-Gi-Oh! Video talking about what world I'd like it to be in. But, over the last few months, I've been very heavy, like, let's do an old universe that we've already have established and expand on that. And, just wanted to make a Road to Yu-Gi-Oh! 9 video on that topic. So let me know, again, anything that you guys would like to see for the brand new upcoming, assumingly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.